And welcome to this week's Real Talk. I'm Scott Bach-Hansen, the Director of Congregational Care and Adult Discipleship here at Herndon United Methodist Church. And this is our weekly check-in series. This is a place for us to be able to come in and find out what's going on in the church, what's going on in our lives, talk about either the sermon series or some programs at church. And today we're actually going to be talking about something that's coming up soon. We are getting ready to have our Lenten study start coming up here the first week of March. And we always get asked, what are we going to do this year? And I've tried to explain we're doing something different. And I just figured, what better person to ask than the person that created this? So I have a special guest with me. If you can't tell, I have Brian Johnson, who is a good friend of mine. We've known each other, gosh, Brian, I think it's over 10 years now. And Brian is the pastor at Haymarket United Methodist Church. And so, Brian, before I kind of get into the questions about the Lenten study, can you maybe give the group a little bit of your background and how you got started and where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a native Northern Virginian, grew up in the Springfield area, lifelong United Methodist, who went to Duke Divinity School, the only place where pastors can train that also has a national championship basketball team. So I've been a Methodist pastor. I was ordained in the same group as Pastor Jonathan. He and I have been friends through the process of becoming pastors. I was a year ahead of him at Duke, but we ended up the same year in the process. So I've known Jonathan for a long time. I've known Scott for a decade. When Scott was a member at St. Matthew's United Methodist Church in Annandale, I was one of the pastors there. So I'm a pastor out at Haymarket Church, Haymarket United Methodist Church. We go by both. And we are a new church. So we worship in an elementary school. And I'm currently in my office, which is above town hall in Haymarket. We rent space. Things to know about me. I'm real passionate about helping people kind of deepen faith and grow in faith and connecting with folks who either aren't active in church or who've been kind of hurt by expressions of church that are, exclusionary. I really love Duke basketball and Tex-Mex food. Those are like the details you need to know about me. And I have a wife who is a church professional. She works for the United Methodist Church in Northern Virginia, and two little boys.
Yeah, and it's funny that Brian touched on a few of these things. First of all, I can't get rid of these Duke guys. Being a Maryland guy through and through, and these Duke guys keep showing up. But obviously, Duke Divinity School is an amazing school. So yeah, kudos to that, and I appreciate the national championship reference. Brian and I used to go to lunch when he was at St. Matthew's, and it was always at the same place. We'd always go to Chevy's or some type of Tex-Mex. And we'd have our chips and salsa with the side of ranch. Well, at least I had the side of ranch. And it was just, it was a great time for us to be able to connect and get to build our relationship. So, but thanks again for coming here today. We're starting this Lenten series, and, there's always opportunities to take a book or take something that somebody else has written either years ago or this year. There's always something new and fresh. But I think it's really important, when I was speaking with Jonathan about what we're going to do, we both like the idea of this study that is being put together that you're organizing. And so can maybe you just start with giving us a 10,000-foot view of how did this study start and maybe a little bit into what this year's study looks like?
Yeah, sure. So it's a collaborative project worked on by pastors and a few church academics, like people who teach theology and stuff or biblical studies, but who are really passionate about the local church. And it started in, I'm a big believer in seasonal, things during Advent and Lent and, like devotionals, which is a thing that church has been doing forever, but doing them in ways that people can, that are easy for them to engage with. So for example, we started in 2019 at my church doing an Advent devotional by text and email. So it's a link to a website, and then you get the link in your email in a text or an email every day. And that went really well. And so I wanted to do something for Lent that year, but for Advent, our church members wrote it, and we just really didn't have, didn't want to tap those folks again, want to give them a rest. And so I thought I'd reach out to some friends and see if they'd be interested in doing it together with me. And then we could all use it for all of our churches. And so in 2020, reached out, had a group of friends where we did it for Holy Week and then the week after Easter Sunday, Holy Week and Easter week. We had a daily devotional. And that ended up being really great for 2020. When we planned it and put it together, we did not realize that everyone would be stuck at home for Holy Week and Easter week in 2020. So it ended up being really great that we had this online resource. And then the next year, we just kind of shot out a message to folks and say, hey, who wants to do this again? We had more interest. Folks were interested in doing it again. We expanded the circle. And so it's become, and that, did that again this year. It's really a group of my friends who I think are legit, and then kind of them and their circles. And so we've got, I think, 18 folks this year. Some folks weren't able to do it who did it previously. I don't know that we've added anyone this year. We added a bunch of folks last year. But it's just an opportunity for those folks to put something together and share it in, our local churches. So there'll be probably 14 or 15 churches that will be making use of this. And those are churches, United Methodist churches in Virginia. It's very United Methodist Virginia heavy. But it's also got some Episcopalian churches in Maryland and one, I think, in Florida. Because I have a dear friend who, I used to go to church with, who's now an Episcopalian priest. And so he connected with his folks. And so, yeah, it's a relatively diverse group, theologically and in a variety of other ways. So, yeah, it's just a thing we can share that we know has got, these are people who I really respect in terms of their thinking and writing and pastoral wisdom that we can share with our churches. Yeah.
So what a great idea, by the way. I think this is awesome. I'm really excited that we're going to be doing this because I have a feeling I know a number of the people that are doing part of the writing. Obviously,
You
Pastor
definitely know a
Jonathan's
couple.
one.
Yeah.
So it'll be exciting to get some insight from some old friends. Can you give us a little bit of background on the theme of what this looks like? Like, are we doing Old Testament, New Testament? Can you give us some background on that and how it's connected?
Absolutely. So this year, our theme is Psalms Our Lord Said. And so what we're doing is, and we, once we agreed we were all going to do it, the group kind of sat down and put out ideas, via email, put out ideas, what we should do. And we voted. And this was the leading vote getter. And so Psalms, my Lord said, and the idea behind it is the early church looked at their Bible, which is the Old Testament, and saw Jesus everywhere. And in particular, they saw Jesus in the Psalms. The Psalms was the early church's prayer book, and they just saw Jesus everywhere there. And so the Gospels are written, and the rest of the New Testament too, but really in the Gospels, we see all these references to the Psalms. And Jesus himself would have known these Psalms well. And so lots of the parables and teachings that Jesus has to say reference the Psalms as well. And so we thought it would be a great idea to take a look at how things that Jesus says in the Old Testament line up with these Psalms that, frankly, like a lot of Christians don't know what to do with the Psalms, right? We're not sure what to do with them, how to pray them, how to read them. And so it's a chance to say, well, here's what Jesus and the early church did with them. I mean, the easy example and why it makes sense for Lent is that Jesus on the cross cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And that's Psalm 22. Jesus, as he's dying, is quoting a psalm. And so this is an opportunity to see these words and what they meant to the early church. And that can also help us better understand those passages. We can see maybe some subtle things that are going on that we might not see otherwise.
I always look at the Psalms as they're the aha moments where you read something and then you see it or read how it's connected either in a hymn or in a prayer, the prayer that everybody knows from Psalm 19, verse 14, where we always share that, may the words from my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to your sight, oh God, our rock and redeemer. We look at those, we look at how they connect to the Gospels, and it's almost like, boom, like, oh my gosh, that's how they're connected. And so I'm really excited about this because, well, there's two reasons. Number one, I'm taking an epistles class, and one of the projects that's coming up is how do the Psalms relate to Paul's lessons. So I'll be able to steal some information there and use it. But I also am just really excited just because the Psalms are such an important piece of the Bible and obviously what we learn. So the connectionalism is awesome. Can you give us maybe a little bit of an idea? I asked you before we started recording about how is this going to be laid out, and you said that really churches can decide what they want to do, but that there is a recommended way of putting it together that I think we'll probably follow at Herndon. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have about 22 entries. We're still finalizing the last little bits. And so with the recommendation that we have, that's not one for every day of Lent, right? And so we're currently in the process of collating those and kind of editing everything and putting it together so folks can use it. What we're recommending folks do that churches do is kind of one or two, or somewhere 2 or 3 a week for most of Lent, and then every day during Holy Week, starting on Palm Sunday and going through Easter. And we're going to kind of have that schedule. We'll say like, this is recommended for, March 8th or whatever. But what's really great about this, and one of the reasons I love it, is that different churches can use it in the way that works for their church. It can be a study. It can be released. I know at least one church is planning to do them kind of all back to back at the very end of Lent. It can be in a variety of media. So our church, we post them on our website, and then we send a link each day via text and email. I know other churches that are using this, and that they're going to print it out because that's what works for their congregation, is print it and hand it to folks, which is why we're trying to nail it down this week, all the entries, so that we can get it to folks in time to do that. But yeah, the idea is that it builds towards Holy Week, and that Holy Week, there's an opportunity to read something every day. And that's part of the work that we're doing, is separating, because there's some Psalms that Jesus quotes and references, or the Gospels reference, that aren't as tied to that last week of Jesus's life, right? And so those will probably happen earlier. And we're certainly not covering all the Psalms in the Gospels. We're just covering a chunk of them. But yeah, each church gets to do their own thing. But my idea is that it builds towards Holy Week.
So this is what we're going to do for Lent at Herndon United Methodist. I'm really excited about this. This is just a great opportunity to get a little bit closer to the Word and also see how they're connected. And so, Brian, thanks for putting this together. Thanks for also jumping on with us here at Herndon United Methodist Church. And I know Jonathan would be very excited to be on here with you, and you guys could team up on me with your Duke basketball references. But we'll save that for maybe lunch one day.
It's my pleasure. And the thing I would just emphasize, the thing I like to say to our church about this is, it's really great to think about this as something that we get to do together with folks, across Virginia, but also beyond, and United Methodist in Virginia, but also beyond United Methodist. Like, this is a way to grow in faith with folks who we don't know and will never know, but are sharing in that kind of journey together. So I'm glad you guys are doing it too. Thanks for having me on, Scott. It's always good to talk with you.
Everybody, this is Brian Johnson, our good friend. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been real talk this week. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you Sunday at Doe Hall, 10 o'clock in the morning for our worship service. It will be in person as well as streaming online. So looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. Thank you.